What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to review Oxenfree 2. I finally got to play the game, and I really do like it. I want to start there, but I also want to say that I do feel it's very, very much the first game again, and I think that dilutes a lot of things about this game. We'll explain exactly what I mean as this video goes on, but one of the things I want to focus on is how long it's been since the first game. For some people, they could have been waiting 6-7 years. I actually had just played the first game. I skipped it, and I played it just earlier this year. So I waited about 5 months in between the first game and second game, and maybe that did hurt it because I had it on my mind of how good that game is, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. I think the story, the characters, the actual loop, and even the ending and the replayability of the game is absolutely fantastic. This game has a lot of those elements, but again, I think because a lot of it is just used a second time, even to the point of some objectives or some kind of story beats to the game, it feels like I had already done a lot of the things in the first game. Now again, that's a little repetitive, but I did overall enjoy it. I think the art style looks great, just like the first game did, but this does have all those sequel kind of jumps that you would expect. I think the audio is great. The audio can kind of jump all over the place, though. When it wants to get very, very loud and kind of spooky or eerie, it can do it. It can also get very, very quiet. I think the audio is great. I actually made a video on my third channel, Podcast Now Back to the Past, on the first game. What I actually really love about the dialogue between characters is that almost you can cut people off. You can wait till the last second to pick your audio choice. You could skip it entirely, or you could do it kind of in the middle of another person's statement or whatever they're saying, and you can kind of cut them off, and it feels very like natural, the conversations. The first game felt like that. This game has all those same things. Again, that's a good sign. I really like that when Riley and Jacob are talking, it's kind of natural that you may talk over the other person by accident, right? You want to kind of jump in. So I thought that's great. Again, the visuals are that jump up that you would expect. I will say one thing. The gameplay is not actually the jump that I thought it was going to be. Now, leading into this game, the last couple of weeks, we got a little bit more of it kind of through, developer videos that they put up on their YouTube channel and stuff. But beyond that, or I guess before that, right, like a month ago, we really had very, very limited idea as to, I guess, the movement of the game, like how the gameplay kind of evolves from the first game to the second game. It makes it look like it's going to be so much more. It's not as big of a jump as I thought. I didn't really mind it, but it's still moving left to right, moving kind of up and down. You climb things now, so that's kind of the big thing. You can jump and kind of, and parkour is probably an overextension of what Riley can do, but there's a little bit more there. But I think in one of the trailers, it shows like the house or cabin turning sideways. That is one scene in the entire game. It never does that any other time, and it's awesome. That's an epic scene, kind of like 60-70% of the way through the game, but like you think that maybe that's going to be the entire game, and it's just not. Even the tears that they show that you can kind of go through to kind of jump through time, there's only a couple of those, so maybe misleading is kind of what I'm hinting at here. Again, I didn't mind it all that much, but if you go in thinking this gameplay is going to be revolutionary, it's really not. It's really more of the same, which is fine to me. The biggest, I'd say, positive I have, along with maybe at the same time the biggest negative, would be the story and the characters. So I really like the cast. Now the cast in this game is a lot smaller because it's kind of a core centric, like a duo, right? It's just Riley and Jacob. Now you will find other people like Olivia and more of the teenagers, right? They're fine, but because they're not really intended to be in the game all that much, the cast is very small. So it's I guess focusing more on like a quantity over quality thing. I think Riley is a fantastic character. Do I like her more than Alex in the first game? I'm gonna honestly say no. I do think she's a different kind of character for sure. She has her kind of past, and she's going to have her future, much like kind of what Alex was going through, and I found it really good. Again, I would say that's a strength of the game. I think Riley as a character is strong. I think the story, it's starting to tell with where she's going to go in life, right? You can kind of see like the past and future. I think it's very, very interesting and cool. What I will say is because we had already done a lot of those things with Alex, it again, I would say, kind of dilutes it. So there's a couple story beats of when the entities, right, like the ghosts are talking to you, they don't feel as powerful as they do in the first game. Now, also in this game, there's kind of different factions of them, and you also have kind of returning characters, so it muddies the water a little bit. But I think some of the biggest moments, say in the first game, when you actually figure out that like Alex is talking to herself or seeing herself throughout the game, right? That really, I think, very, very clever twist. There are those similar kinds of twists in this game, but they're much the same. They're very much the same. They're not exactly, it's not literally one-to-one, but you've seen it relatively before, and that kind of hurts it. It's like, okay, well, it's still good. The writing, I think, of this game is still fantastic, of the characters, of their future, of their past, of what the plot of the story is. And by the way, the reason I'm dodging a lot of it is because that's the base of this game, right? You go from left to right, you go do a couple different objectives, you talk a lot, you answer a lot of questions, you ask a lot of questions, but then the entirety of the game really is the story it's telling with the ghosts, with certain characters, with you, so on, so on. So I'm trying to avoid that. I don't want to really spoil it. The idea is a lot of the big beats, whether it be with the ghosts or even, the ending is definitely interesting. I won't show it or talk about it, but it is definitely different. It connects to the first game. This very much is a sequel where I think you should play the first game. If you jump into this game, I think you're in for quite a ride. But I will say this. The first game I actually think was more difficult to understand and to kind of get the full picture of what happened in the past. And with the ghost crew, right, and the idea of these signals and them trying to kind of come back, the first game threw a lot at you. What I would say about this game, again, in a pro and a con, this game recaps a lot. They talk about the events of the first game. They talk about characters in the first game so much. Then it obviously connects directly to the first game in such a big way towards the last, say, 30-40% of the game. It very much needs the first game, right? So I guess in a pro, it very much is a sequel. It continues the story. I actually think the ending is awesome. I really love the ending. It kind of got me. I didn't really get emotional, but I definitely felt something inside me. Maybe I guess that's emotion, right? But I think they nailed it there. But, I think you need to play the first game, obviously, for that to work. But on the other side of things, I think it's actually pretty simplistic. I think in terms of the complexity of the story of the first game, this game is so much more simple. These characters are kind of outright telling you things. Or if something is confusing, there's probably, and there were several times, oftentimes there would be a conversation choice to just flat out ask, well, what do you mean, right? So if somebody's speaking in a riddle, one of your questions can literally be, well, what does that mean? Can you explain it more? And then they will. Then they'll go on and explain it. Now, again, in some ways that's good. In some ways this game feels kind of more streamlined. I think more people might be able to follow it. Again, I think you need the first game first, but I think if you play this game, you'll kind of get it. And in a way, that's a strength. In another way, it's not as complex. I think the entire game is not as complex. And without spoiling the ending, let's just say a huge part of the first game is that loop, is replaying it and figuring out that big twist. The ending in the first game, I think it's one of the greatest endings in any game, period, ever, okay? In terms of Alex figuring out what happens and then the replayability of the game, let's say. This game does not have that. This game is, I feel meant to be played once. You probably can play it more than one time, but it does not have the complexity of replaying the game as the first game has. So, in general, it's a second game. You kind of need the first game for it. It improves some aspects of it. It streamlines some aspects of it. And in some ways, that's good. In some ways, that is for the best. But in other ways, I think it repeats a lot of the things that made the first game so unique, which hurts this game because you don't have as much uniqueness as you did the first game. I will say the kind of twist towards the end is the biggest thing this game has going for it. It did get me. I will say this. I don't want to say what the twist is, but there is one part of this game where I looked to my wife who didn't care at all about the game or that I was playing it, and I said I knew they were going to do that. So I did predict one thing, but I do think there's a pretty clever twist as the game goes on, towards the end of it. It has its moments, but it doesn't have as many moments as the first game. A lot of things are borrowed and just used again, and that overall does hurt this game. And also, in terms of the price and the length of time and stuff, $20. Now, I paid for it. I have no regrets whatsoever. I really liked it. I think overall this is a really good good game. It's just not a better game than the first game. But it's $20, and it took me maybe 4.5 hours, so this is not the longest game. You can go off the beaten path. There's actually some side quests in this game, which is kind of unique, and I actually kind of liked it. But I don't think you're going to get more than like 6, 7, 8 hours out of it. Now, that's fine with me. I'm just letting you guys know $20 per 4 to 6 hours maybe to beat the game, and you can judge if that's worth it for yourself. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you want to check out any of my other social media or my other YouTube channels, I did a full kind of retrospective video on the first Oxenfree game. Those links will be in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.